Are you wondering how much you need to have saved up in order to retire? Maybe you're in your accumulation years, or maybe you're getting close to wanting to pull the trigger. Well, you're in the right place. I'm Amy Buck. I'm owner of PlanPath Financial, and you have found me on my YouTube channel, Retirement Planning 411. Everyone has a different vision of what retirement looks like. One person or couple may desire to have a second home on the beach, where another may choose just to stay in their original home. They want to be surrounded by family and friends, really aren't going to travel a whole lot, but maybe their goal is to help their kids buy their first home or leave a legacy to their kids or their community. Yet another may decide that they want to sell everything, move to another country, but do frugal things when they get there, like hike and kayak and things that just don't cost a whole lot of money. Obviously, each of those retirements comes with a different price tag. So the first thing that's important to answer is, what do you want your retirement to look like? And what do you think that's going to cost? Oftentimes, people have a similar lifestyle in retirement than they had when they were working. If you will live a similar lifestyle, you can expect that you're only going to need about 80% of what you were spending in your working years in order to get by in retirement. Because think about it, you're not going to have Medicare tax and Social Security tax coming out of your income anymore. And you're also not going to be making contributions into a retirement plan. So I have heard people just throw arbitrary numbers out there. Maybe they heard it from someone else as their retirement goal or whatnot. But you sometimes hear people say, oh, you need $1 million before you can retire. And while that would definitely put you ahead of the average American, if you're a high earner who's been accustomed to a higher end lifestyle, $1 million isn't probably going to even be close to what you need. If you're somebody who's lived more frugally, $1 million may be much more than you need. So you can see how an arbitrary number just thrown out there may not really suit what you need as far as a savings fund. Another rule I've heard thrown around is the 10 times rule. And what that says is that if you take your salary in your last year of retirement and multiply it by 10, you come up with that number that you need for retirement. This does factor in what your income has been along the way and probably what your lifestyle is, assuming that you've been living within your means. But it's not going to take into account how long you'll live, what age you're going to retire. When it comes down to it, the rule that's out there that I would lean into the most, just for making an estimate, is the 4% rule. You may have heard of this before. This research was done by a gentleman named Bill Bengen. He was a financial planner. He had gotten his CFP. He was working with clients in his practice, and many of them were asking this question that you're asking today. How much do I need to retire? And he wanted a more concrete answer for them than what he currently had available. So he went to work and did some research. He looked at 75 years worth of historical data, what had happened in the market with bonds and stocks. He ran numbers based on different portfolios, ended up honing in on a 50-50 portfolio. In other words, 50% stocks, 50% bonds. And what he determined, and I'll attach the actual research in the notes if you want to actually look at the study. But what it came down to is that he determined that if you were to take 4% out of your retirement funds in your first year of retirement, and then every year after that, add on whatever the inflation rate is for that year, your withdrawal rate would have a very high probability of lasting through the 30 years of retirement. So as an example, if you did have $1 million in your retirement savings account and you were going to utilize the 4% rule, that means that in the first year of retirement, you would take a $40,000 distribution. In the second year of retirement, you would add on for inflation. So if inflation that year had been 2%, 2% of $40,000 is $800. That means in the second year, you would take a distribution of $40,800. If the year after that, inflation had been 2.5%, you're going to add on the 2.5% to the $40,800. So you're adding on $1,020. And your actual distribution in that year would be $41,820. So if right now you're thinking, if I have $1 million saved up, I can only pull out $40,000 to live on in my first year of retirement, just hold up a minute, because we haven't taken into account Social Security, pensions, etc. Adding on to the example that we started with a $1 million savings account. Let's also assume that this is a couple. Each of them has had a working history, and one has a $3,000 per month Social Security benefit, and the other has a $2,500 Social Security benefit. And we won't worry about at what age they're taking retirement and all of that for now. We're just going to keep it simple for this example. But that puts them at $5,500 worth of income from Social Security alone. And again, we won't work any pensions into this, but if pensions are part of your life, that is something you'll have to take into account. So in the example that we gave earlier, where that first year of retirement with $1 million, you could pull out $40,000. We're actually adding that on to the $66,000 that this couple would have annually for Social Security benefits. So that actually puts their annual spend, if they have $1 million retirement savings, at $106,000. So the $1 million starting number is not the right number for everyone. So how do you figure out what your retirement savings number is using the score percent rule? Well, we're going to start by figuring out, what do you think you're going to need to spend in that first year? Let's say we have a couple who is currently able to live very comfortably on $7,000 per month before tax. And if we multiply that by 12 months, that comes out to $84,000 a year. But we're going to multiply that by 80%, because they're not paying those Social Security, Medicare taxes, and they're not putting money into retirement anymore. That means that in retirement, they're going to need $67,200 per year, at least to that first year, in order to live the lifestyle that they're currently living. But we want to back away from that number, the amount they'd be getting from Social Security payments. In this scenario, let's say that one couple has a Social Security benefit of $2,000 per year and the other one of $2,500 per year, $2,500. So between the two of them, they're going to be bringing in $54,000 worth of income based on Social Security. That leaves $13,200 per year that would need to be funded out of their retirement savings. Take that number and multiply it by 25, which is in effect doing the reverse of taking the 4% of that initial retirement savings number. So if we take the $13,200 and multiply it by 25, the retirement savings need for that couple would be $330,000. Much different than the $1 million that we started with in the last scenario. I am going to put into the notes today, like I've said, the research done by Bill Bengal on the 4% rule. I'm also going to put a link to research called the Trinity Study that was completely independent of Bill Bengal's research, but looked at very similar scenarios and historical data and came up with very similar conclusions to the 4% rule. Now, the 4% rule has had its share of criticism, especially in recent years. Since the pandemic, we've seen unprecedented things happening with the stock market, high valuations for equities, and high interest rates with bonds, and also high inflation. That's a mix that we haven't seen historically. So we don't know for sure. It's not a proven fact that the 4% rule is going to pan out. But historically speaking, it seems to work. And as I've looked at more and more research coming out, even post-pandemic, it does appear that 4% is a pretty good estimate. But when it comes into the finer details of financial planning, you may need to get a professional involved to make sure that all of your bases are covered. You're watching me on YouTube. Retirement Planning 411 is the name of my channel. And I have a Facebook group with the exact same name. If you have not joined that Facebook group yet, I do invite you to come on over to Facebook, hit join, and we would love to have you as part of the discussion. You can ask questions, you can share your insights, and there's lots and lots of educational stuff that I post there. Thanks for tuning in today.